For this reaction video, we watched a TED Talk. The speaker talks about immigration, and he's an immigrant who moved to the United States, or immigrated to the United States when he was 14 years old. Um, he starts off by saying that it's hard for some people to notice who's an immigrant, and sometimes it's not, because sometimes it's hard to tell who's an immigrant, because they don't seem like what a normal immigrant would, I guess, seem like to them. And he talks about how his career, he like runs a interactive tech startup, um, and how that might not seem like a normal job an immigrant might have. And he said for him to get where he was, he must have had a connection that's deeper than a career, like a connection to American culture and American lifestyle. He connected to the American people, and the American lifestyle, and how we live our lives. So he has a connection that's just deeper than wanting a career and having a career in the United States. That he actually knows and connects with our culture, and internet culture is mainly what he's referring to. He talks about how immigration is an unfair trade when he's talking about his immigration and his childhood and coming here. He says that the parents pay the cost, as they're the ones actually moving and immigrating and paying for everything, monetary wise and otherwise, just like having to leave their home country and move. He says children reap the benefits, as the parents are mainly doing it for their children and the future generations and not for themselves, which is also another cost they're paying. Then the children are reaping those benefits of their parents immigrating. And then he said the grandkids take it all for granted. As the third generation, they don't really think about how their grandparents immigrated. All they know is that they were born in the country and that their parents have been in there for a while, and they don't really know much about what their grandparents had to go through, and they take it for granted. He talks about how many immigrants live in near poverty or in poverty, while many do not, and how it's hard to say, and that while most people just assume, or it's just like people just tend to think that immigrants live in poverty. He says that many don't actually, and he considers poverty more that you don't have the basic necessities of living. He said that there's a better future for the next generation. He's talking about why people immigrate. It's not really for themselves. It's to set up the better future for the next generation. And he talks about the suffering of immigrants and the suffering of immigration, and that a century ago, that the great suffering that was affecting immigrants and immigration was caused by nature, as you had to cross oceans on steamships or travel hundreds of thousands of miles by train or by foot or by horse or something like that. And now today, that you don't have to do that. You can just board a plane, drive a car. It's a lot easier for transportation, and nature's not really a problem anymore. So he says that today the suffering of immigrants is caused by man and man-made policy. And the policies that countries have, their immigration policies are strict, and that's what immigrants have to worry about today is man-made things and man causing problems for them in their immigration search. He says it's easier to ship a box of bananas to India than reunite a child with their parents, which just proves his. He's talking about his last point of the suffering caused by policy, as it's easier to ship just like produce or something far away than it is to reunite actually an actual human child with their parents. He talks about the Chinese Exclusion Act and how that um, the Chinese and Asians and Southeast Asians were um, like kind of it was like racism towards them and prejudice in the 1960s, as they weren't even allowed to immigrate to the United States, and how there were other laws like that all throughout this country's history. He says that there's outdated views on immigration, and that the people uh, the people's views on immigration are a lot different um, than the ruling class or the politicians and all that. He talks about how immigration is a good thing, that a lot of people don't view it that way, but that's the actual truth. That immigration is the reason the U.S. has a growing population and economy, and that the system relies on immigration to grow and support itself. And without immigration, the system would kind of collapse. Um, and throughout the United States history, immigration has been key and important to the country's growth and success. Um, he's talking about his tech company and his career again. He says that more than a third of U.S. tech startups have at least one immigrant co-founder, um, and how he's not sure if that actually correlates or if it's just a coincidence, but that's a little factoid. Um, he says you can't judge the people's characters, like you can't judge immigrants' characters by the passports they bring. So when people are immigrating to the United States and you're deciding who should be let in, you can't judge people just by what their documentation is showing. So it's hard to decide who is like safe or should be let in and who shouldn't be. Um, then he ends off his speech by talking about how the people are letting other people, like us, the people, are letting other people decide who we let in this country. Wherein he's referring to politicians, and then he says, "Don't let those people, the politicians and the people in office, make that decision for us. That power should belong to the people, and we should let them know um, what we want and how we view it." Um, and this affects like business and business law, um, especially like international business, as you're dealing with like other countries and um, business law about like immigration rules and laws that are in place for businesses that they have to follow or adhere to, that for like visas and green cards and stuff like that. They have to follow those rules, follow those laws, and because you can't just hire anybody, they have to be most of the time have to be registered with like the paperwork and stuff they have to fill out. That's also how it affects managing a business, because you need to know the immigration laws and stuff like that and follow them, or you can get in trouble. Um, Even if the laws aren't fair, um, or what you believe in or not, for now you have to follow the laws until they're changed, or else you can get fined or punished. It's also good to know for business wise how immigration helps the economy and helps it grow, and that a constant immigration can help economic growth and just the growth of the country in general.